Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class today. We broadcast 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. If you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up and running, 605-477-3249. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. Rich Scheben's with us. Welcome, Rich Scheben. Oh, we wound it up. Where's Rich?
Sorry about that, Vince. I am here. Life is good. Had a lot of company this summer. They keep coming, and I just had to hit a button here. So how are you doing this morning?
Well, I was okay. Until I got an email from you early this morning, and it said, quote, Vince, he would never go on the air with you, exclamation point, Rich. What's that all about?
Well, you were talking about Mayor Pete, correct?
Yeah.
Well, they don't. The Democrats do not want synergy. They need a divided nation. They want us to think it's a left-right paradigm. So the left, at any level, never wants to take off the disguise, the cloak, because they want to give the perception, manufacture the perception that it's more of a left-right paradigm than it is the aristocracy managing the serfs. So they don't want hard questions. Every Democrat at pretty much every level when they get interviewed, they get softball questions. I mean, just look at Donna Brazile to Hillary Clinton during the presidential debate. She handed Hillary Clinton the questions. They were all prepared. Their job is to censor, surveil, do things like hire Black Lives Matter and Antifa on the streets for violence to destroy property. Their job is to get money from the elite so they can hire armed guards and live behind walls to be protected and demand that we the people can't. Their job is to live in big houses and fly around the world and ask us to pay carbon taxes. Their job is to have sex with children and use distractions like hashtag #MeToo to divide and conquer the people. This is what they do. Their job is to distract, dumb down, and divide the American people. He would never come on your radio show and take any questions because, first of all, he's not going to be prepared with the questions. He's not going to be slipped the answers like Democrats typically do on the mainstream media. I mean, look at all the things that are pending right now with the left. And everybody knows the Democrats sold out to the globalist society, the elite. I mean, hopefully we're going to be getting a declassification on Epstein and pedophilia and who knows how many big names in Congress, state senators, Hollywood, big elite CEOs and CFOs, just big name multi-gazillionaire people from all over the world, politicians. Hopefully we'll have a declassification on Uranium One and the Clinton Foundation, on FISA warrants, on all the geoengineering and weather modification tools that's been going on. Basically all the data related to President Obama and the billions of cash given to Iran. and hopefully a declassification on 911. Hopefully a declassification relating to alternative energies. See, we are for the people. We on USA Prepares are for the little guy. So that's why I said, and by the way, thank you for the compliment in the earlier email, but I'll be honest with you, Vince, unless they are guaranteed softball questions with the answers slipped under the table. I mean, look at Ilhan Omar. She literally said just a few weeks ago that Latinos can't compete in a merit-based system. The left is so bigoted, so racist, so intolerant, and that's why they call the right that. But see, the left is no longer the Democrat Party, and that's why the Democrat Party is so upset, because they have been lied to. Their constituents have been lied to. The Democrats are basically, their whole strategy is lies, propaganda, false flags, and hoaxes. That's everything. I mean, I'll go over a few articles later, but here's an article: a lesbian Democrat admits to lying about being a doctor. A state senator, she literally admitted to pulling 77 bullets out of people from the Pulse shooting victims. You just can't even make this stuff up anymore. This is beyond Twilight Zone episodes. It's beyond 1984. It's all about illusions. So it is the aristocracy managing and controlling the serfs, and people are waking up to this. So they need more division. They have to foment hate, chaos, infighting, lack of civility, editing audio and videos, which they've been doing even for me for years. They represent the elite. I mean, they did an attempted coup on the President of the United States. So this is why they demonize, discredit, and delegitimize people like us that stand up for truth, the rule of law. How can you imagine we're being demonized because we stand up for the rule of law? You can't even put words to this. So they teach their young people to chant, to do violence, to scream, to forget about common sense, logic, and math. And they are literally admitting that they can't compete in the arena of ideas and solutions. So they need to indoctrinate, especially the young people through public education and colleges, into this phony left-right paradigm. That's why they use celebrities. Celebrities gave up their individualism for fame and money in order to be actors for propaganda and to control the narrative for the elite. But people are waking up to this. And, flooding the country with illegals so they can vote illegally. Voting at 16 they want to do. They're voting in multiple states, multiple names. They're voting. Dead people are voting. Felons are voting. They want to eliminate the electoral college without constitutional amendments. They want reparations for certain people, which is just divide and conquer strategy, and to buy votes. They're pushing tyranny, treason, sedition, and espionage under the guise of multiculturalism and group identity politics, and create more disunity so they can fill their pocketbooks and wallets with more greed. And they're literally playing and conning the American people and talking them into being hyphenated Americans. They want to get rid of free speech. So they've literally, their desperation is so irrational right now that they want to take the side of illegal immigrants over the indigenous people, the people who were born here. So anything to do with cultures, traditions, heritage in the future and the rule of law is gone. And this is one of the reasons I talk about practice what you preach laws all the time, Vince. But if Mayor Pete came on, I would be shocked. And if he did, I'd love to be part of that just to ask him some questions as well. Vince?
Well, I feel really bad for the guy because he was interviewed by a radio station, and Cumulus, the media company, said the interview could not be aired. And I felt bad for the guy. So I sent an email. Let me just read it. The email was really simple. It was to info@PeteForAmerica.com. And here is what I said. Quote, here's the whole email. Quote, Mayor Pete, would you like to be on the air with me on Genesis Communications Network, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. Central Time? USA Prepares, GCNlive.com. Thank you, Vincent Finelli. That was the whole email. The subject line said, would Mayor Pete like a radio interview with me? That was the subject line. And I felt bad for the guy because he must believe that having a publicly well-known open homosexual as CEO of corporate United States of America is a good thing. And I'd like to know why. Why is that a good thing? Is that raising the bars? Is that raising the standards? Or is that lowering the standards? Is that going to help us as a country? Is that going to raise the opinion of others in other countries of the United States of America? Or is that going to lower their opinions of us? Are they going to say, you know what, that's a really neat thing. The United States is embracing homosexuality at the highest level of corporate America, the highest level. Apple Computer embraces it. The United States government embraces it. What a wonderful thing. Is that what they would say? Or would they laugh at us?
It's the bottom line is to break our will and make us submissive. When you do group identity politics, a.k.a. victim group status, a.k.a. protectionist group status, and you say we need more of this people or more of that people, what you're really saying is just what Ilhan Omar says. And I use the term Ilhan Omar in quotes because, or with an asterisk, because apparently Omar is not her real last name. But that being said, when you lower the bars of standards and expectations in lieu of looking at certain criteria and parameters of success like hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications, you have discredited, delegitimized, taken the dignity and value out of work. You cannot make a country reap the product of prosperity and controlling one's own destiny when you say we're going to reward mediocrity. We're going to turn America into the law of diminishing returns. Opportunity, knowledge, ingenuity, productivity, and innovation will only be for the elite and who we say from the little people, the bottom 93%. So you're degrading and disrespecting all these people, again, not empowering them as an individual or group. You're actually destroying your own nation. And you're insulting these people at the same time. You're saying that you can't compete, your work is suboptimal. So you insult their work ethic, their ability, their intelligence. And group identity politics has been so damaging to this country in that way and so many more. Vince?
Well, I was thinking we could just go to any store, any big box chain store, and just see how the standards have been lowered. Just ask anybody where something is, or ask them if they have something that you're looking for, or ask them where it is, and you'll see how the standards have been lowered. We'll be right back. Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich, you mentioned Jeffrey Epstein, or Epstein, whichever it is, and I was thinking about his airline company, the pedophile airlines. And Bill Clinton allegedly got at least 20 trips on pedophile airlines. And the number of people who are in the circle, the friends of Jeffrey Epstein, are people like the Kennedys, Kissingers, Bill Clinton, Dustin Hoffman, Courtney Love, Jimmy Buffett, Alec Baldwin, Phil Collins, David Blaine, Kevin Spacey. I wonder what he's doing there. Katie Couric, George Stephanopoulos, Charlie Rose, Woody Allen. Well, that makes a lot of sense, right? Woody Allen. So these are just some of the few people, according to Vanity Fair, who have been in the presence of Jeffrey Epstein. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you something. I don't think the American people are prudes, but people who scream the most have the most to lose. And I think it's very obvious that I have an article right here in front of me. Epstein's female fixer was extremely close to Chelsea Clinton. So when our listeners complain that government workers have getting $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for pensions, that all pension plans are pretty much in the red, and they're asking you, the little people, to live off of Social Security for way less than half. You have the right to be upset because Bill Clinton stole $2 trillion and replaced them with IOUs in the Social Security Department. So, pardon my little my diversion there, but this is going to be a big deal. Everything that comes from the left, because they do not care about the people. This is not the JFK Democrat Party, folks, okay? The left has totally sold out to the elite, 100%. I can't count the amount of examples that we've given over the air. Everything is fake. Everything is a hoax. Everything is lies and propaganda. I mean, let me just give you a few examples, Vince, if I may. Here's an article, Noose, which sent University of Michigan dean on racist tirade. Turns out to be an employee who was practicing his fishing knot practice. Now, I'm a fly fisherman also, and there's certain knots that you have to know. Well, apparently he left a rope on a table somewhere, and someone found it, and they made a big deal about it because they were saying, "Oh, well, we can't let a crisis go to waste. Here's a noose. Obviously, this person wants to probably hang somebody of a person of color." I remember when, obviously I wasn't alive during that era, but I remember during the reading during like the 30s and 40s, people of color, that term was a very derogatory term. It's amazing how the Democrats have brought it back and changed the context to turn everybody into some type of victim group status and feel entitled to lower the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job and keeping a job, which has done nothing but foment hate, divide the people, and when you, again, lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job, you destroy your country from within. Here's another article. The radicalism behind the racism-charged, overplayed, and overused media Dems screaming of racist ring hollow. I read somewhere that over the weekend, CNN and MSNBC said the word racist like every 7 or 8 words for like a 48-hour period. It was like well over 1,000 times. So this is why you hear racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, conspiracy theorist, intolerant, violent hater with an anti in front of it, pretty much every word, and an ism, ist, or phobia in the back of every word, because they have to foment hate. They have to have divide and conquer. And speaking of Epstein and pedophilia, Mueller's, next article, star witness, indicted on child sex crimes. We're not making this up, folks. We'll be back right after the break.
Yeah, and since we're talking about politics and perversion, Epstein, Jeffrey, according to the Business Insider, donated $50,000 to former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer in 2006. And, of course, Eliot Spitzer left office in disgrace. Something about some prostitutes. John Kerry received $4,000 from Epstein. And, retired Senator Chris Dodd got a $1,000 donation from Epstein in 2006, but he returned it. And let's see who else. Chuckles Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, Chuckles Schumer, also known as Chuck Schumer. It's estimated that Epstein donated about $7,000 to him. And former President George H.W. Bush received $1,000 from Epstein. And Bill Clinton got $2,000 from him in 1992. But also it was reported that the Clinton Foundation has received $25,000 from Epstein. And let's see, of course, Bill Clinton has made numerous trips in the pedophile airlines owned by Epstein. And let's see, Bob Dole received $1,250. Who else? I actually received more than that, but that was just one donation. He donated more than $4,000 to former Senator Jeff Bingaman, a Democrat from New Mexico, but Bingaman returned some of it. Let's see who else. Joe Lieberman. He received $3,000 from Jeffrey. Former Senator Tom McMillan, Democrat from Maryland, received $3,000 from Jeff. And then Senator Alphonse D'Amato, a Republican from New York, received $2,000 from him. Let's see. New Mexico Democrat John Kelly received $2,000 from Jeffrey. And the list goes on. So it looks like Jeffrey, alleged pedophile and convicted sex offender, registered sex offender, has been spreading money around to buy influence. I mean, why else would you do that, right? That's the way I see it.
Yeah, we keep confusing the term leadership with bought and paid for. And when we refer to the term bought and paid for, what that really means is that you sold out to little people. Now, for all the feminists who are out there, and you get all upset from this manufactured Me Too, which was created by the elite as a distraction, which I've made very clear over the years. It's okay for your heroes to basically sell your children to people who want sex, aka pedophilia, which is illegal as hell. But it's not okay for heterosexual men and women to have sex if it's adult mutual consensual sex. Remember Barbra Streisand? Not that long ago, it was regarding an article and a quote from, I think it was a quote from Michael Jackson. She said his sexual needs are his sexual needs. Again, you know what? We're not prudes. Americans are not prudes. They just don't want other people's lifestyles shoved down down their throats, and they want adult mutual consensual sex. I can't say that enough. You go in a room and you do your thing. You leave the kids alone. And you don't need to rape women. You don't need to tie them up. You don't need to blindfold them. You don't need to beat them. I know the 80 million copies that mostly were of that Shades of Grey or whatever the name of that book was. It was a movie. I know the majority of purchasers were women, but that still doesn't give you enough leeway to beat women and punch them and hit them and tie them up and blindfold them and all this other stuff. Pedophilia is a big thing, and this is why, I don't know if declassify is the right word, but all these names need to come out and let the chips fall where they may. A quote from someone from the Democrat Party. But here's an article right here. This is Italian police bust elite network that brainwashes and sells children to the wealthy. Includes city mayor, renowned psychotherapist, etc. Another article right here. Library deletes children fondling drag queens during story hour. Folks, I know this sounds like we're making this up. These are all published articles in the public domain. I promise you. Illegal immigrants are now buying kids to enter the U.S. Now, a lot of these articles get purged. A lot of, the big tech platforms, the Googles, the YouTube, which is owned by Google and Alphabet, all the big tech, they're doing everything to hide this information, to distort it, to change the titles, change the words, change the context. They don't want this information to get out. But people are sick and tired of the aristocracy telling them how to live when they're not practicing what they preach. And I've given shows, Vince, you can verify that, especially when I monologue. I've given whole shows on practice what you preach laws. If we had that, see, the elite don't want accountability. They want a special tiered system of rules, laws, and accountability based on what victim group status you have, what protectionist group status you have. And they call it identity politics because they don't want you to connect the dots as the little people. Well, the little people are waking up, and the little people are tired of being told what to think, what to say, because the narrative, the memes, the talking points, and the microphones are held by the elite, and they hire people at a pretty good wage to be actors, whether it be Hollywood, whether it be mainstream media, anchor people. It doesn't matter. Their job is to manufacture perception, pity, guilt, and ideology. Remember that Micah Brzezinski, not too long ago, she said that the people have to believe, I'm paraphrasing her, I don't have the quote in front of me right now, but she said the people have to believe what we say. Okay, so it's very obvious that not only do they want to get rid of free speech, they want to get rid of free thinking. And this is how they control the little people. This is how they control the serfs. They divide us by every group possible: skin pigmentation, gender, sexual orientation, religion, ideology. They're going after generations. If there's two people in this country that's ashamed of their behavior, the elite will make them a protectionist group or a victim group status. But think about this, especially in the realm of getting and keeping a job. When you give people the permission from the elite to feel entitled to lower the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job and giving them victim group status, there's nobody in the world, and I have that NFL analogy that I talked about, I wrote in the book, there's nobody in the world that agrees with rewarding mediocrity, especially in that context, is going to benefit our company, our country, and our people, especially that particular group. It does the exact thing. It's made as a divide and conquer strategy to make you submissive. So if you say anything, they'll throw these politically correct buzzwords at you like accountability, diversity, democracy, and they'll call you a racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent hater, etc., which means nothing. These words don't even have value anymore. They don't even have a real definition because they're used almost every second of the day from the mainstream media, or at least every minute of the day. And people are getting tired of it. Like here's an article, the poll, moderate Democrats turned off by the party's 2020 open borders agenda. Well, they don't care about, and this is why I talk about the inflation chart. The cost shifting that is occurring to the little people is beyond ridiculous. It's kind of like when, the Fed, the powers that be are always bailing out the too big to fails and too big to jails. Okay? Like QE. The Fed bought $4 trillion in Treasury bonds over the last 10 years with quantitative easing. And the corporate debt went up $4 trillion. Instead of letting all these zombie companies go out of business, we've done the exact opposite. So the little people pays for the cost-shifting debt through inflation. And this is one of the reasons why earnings expectations are being lowered by corporations so they can say they made their estimates. It's all a game. It's all a bunch of crap. I mean, foreigners aren't even buying our bonds, a.k.a. our debt anymore. And if no one buys our bonds, interest rates go up. If interest rates go up, I mean, we've talked about this till I know I have, till I'm blue in the face. Everything collapses. Stocks, bonds, housing, real estate, especially commercial and retail. Emerging markets, we can't even afford the interest in our debt. We can't even afford the pensions. We can't afford anything if you do the real math. So if rates increase, bond prices go down because they need to find buyers of our debt. So yields go up. It's an inverse relationship with bonds. I know this audience knows that. So it's very disturbing because I read an article not too long ago that 60% of our stocks in 40 countries, 60% of all stocks in 40 countries did worse than our 1-month U.S. Treasury notes from 1990 through 2018. Now think about that. If no one's going to buy with an impressive statistic like that, and that's because of all the corruption and manipulation everywhere. So if people aren't buying our debt, wow, I mean, things are going to change big time, and not in a good way for the little people. I mean, I remember talking about this about a month ago or two. I can't remember when it was, but the reason why GDP looked good over the last couple of years because we had a lot of catastrophes like hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, mudslides, wildfires. Well, keep in mind, remember the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis, the loans that led to the collapse, and the trade imbalance and all that stuff for the U.S. Well, right now, just in corporate leverage alone, we have out the market, the subprime debt for corporate debt, the debt bubble, is more than twice the size right now. So everything is literally teetering on a point, being held up by thread. The whole economy is based on an imperial con artist nightmare. This is what Trump inherited. You got to give him a lot of credit for keeping the economy going, at least to keep the unit of measures and calculations that we have, keeping us out of a recession. And we'll be back right after the break, folks.
I guess that was my fault that I brought up that I invited Pete What's-His-Butt to be on the air with me. And, it's interesting that some people now feel that they are entitled to flaunt their perversion as if it's normal. And I just wanted to give What's-His-Butt a chance because he was not aired on the Cumulus Network. I thought, well, we'd at least give him a chance here, and Mrs. Finelli said, if you do that, you have to have an equal opportunity for all the candidates to come on air with you. And I said, yeah, well, we can do that. We can have, all the candidates, all the bona fide candidates can have an opportunity to come on, the transvestites, the bisexuals, the trisexuals, the ones who can't decide, which sex they are at the moment, all those guys, they will give them an equal opportunity to come on and tell us why that, perversion is where it's at. So that was one thought. By the way, since you mentioned automobiles, Rich Scheben. Well, I wasn't going to.
Here we go.
I wasn't going to say anything, but since you mentioned it, I feel obligated.
Did I mention it? I don't remember mentioning it.
Boy, time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
but
does.
no, I did want to say this. This is really interesting, at least to me. So and this relates to what you called forced obsolescence, and I think that's a wonderful term. So I was working on the screws on the back of a German car, and there happened to be about 6 of them here, the same particular brand. And I looked at the screws that hold the license plates on. And what this manufacturer did is they took some aluminum rivets that are tapped, and they riveted them to the back of the trunk of this particular vehicle. And then they have stainless steel screws, which are top-of-the-line screws. I mean, stainless steel screws are expensive, machine screws. And there are 4 of them that hold the license plates in. Well, they rust in place because of the salt in the air during the winter. And what happens is the screws break off in the rivets, or the rivets break, and you can't put the license plates on. So I thought, how many of this particular model car does this happen to? The answer is all of them. So what I wanted to share with the class is, if you have fasteners that you think you're going to put on and take off, with some kind of a frequency, like license plates, you're forced to buy new license plates every time they have a new and more improved reflective paint in Missouri. So every couple of years, you have to buy new license plates because they say your license plates wear out. Well, you may not be able to get the screws out that hold the license plates in. And then if you have to bring it to a mechanic to drill and tap those rivets, you're looking at $50 because the screws break off because of the rust that the county governments put on they put the salt on the roads with the beet juice, and it destroys vehicles. And it's not just that. So anyway, as far as those small screws, make sure you use something called an anti-seize compound, okay, on the threads, or at least synthetic grease, so you'll be able to get them out next time. I was under a Chevy truck yesterday, and we're doing a transmission rebuild, my son and I. And so we removed the drive shaft, and road salt got into the universal joint and destroyed that. So it needs to have the universal joint pressed in. That's probably a $100 repair, if you bring your vehicle to a shop to have one universal joint replaced, about $100. And then we disconnected the cross member that holds the transmission up in the truck, and removed the starter, removed the bolts. Well, of course, you have to remove the exhaust pipe to take the transmission out of this particular V6 truck. It's a Chevy. And the stud that's in the exhaust pipe just breaks off. Why? Because it's rusted in place. So now that has to be pressed out and a new stud pressed in. That's another $50 job. Then, to make the matter, just to top this off, the transmission won't come out. All the bolts are removed because the transmission is rusted to the engine. It won't come out. Now, it's only been a day that we've been hammering and banging and chipping away at this and using all kinds of solvents and penetrating oils and lubricants. We can't get it out. So I went to the internet. It's not just us. It's a common problem. So what I'm saying, class, is repairs are going to cost a fortune because of rust. All kinds of rust. Things that you've never even thought about. Like the screws that hold your license plates on that you're required to change every couple of years because your license plates wear out, according to them. I used to be proud of my vehicles, and I would wash the car and wash the license plate and wax the license plate. No more. I wash everything but the license plates because I want them to be filthy and hard to read. Rich Scheben and I will be right back right after these few short commercial announcements and top of the hour news. OffGridMontana.com. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. And since Rich Scheben mentioned automobiles, I want to let you know that the material that I use as an anti-seize compound is called copper coat. And it's available in like an 8-ounce size, actually 16-ounce size, and it's darn expensive. At least I think it is. A little plastic bottle with a little brush inside is about $20. But it lasts me 10 years or maybe longer, and I use it on spark plug threads always because I don't want the spark plugs to get stuck. I use it on wheel bolts. Now, you're not supposed to use it on wheel bolts or wheel lug nuts, but I do. And that's my choice because I want to be able to get them off. But if you do it wrong, your lug nuts may become loose. So they don't want you meaning the manufacturers don't want you to do that. But I always do. So don't follow my advice. Do your own research and see if you want to do it. And if you do, make sure that you use a torque wrench and torque the lug nuts or lug bolts to make sure that they don't come off. Because I'm so concerned about being able to get wheels off and back on should I have a flat tire. Because there's a guy right in our village right here, right now, riding around in a Toyota Tacoma, the big one, the pickup truck, and full-size pickup truck, and he can't get his rear wheels off because they're rusted in place. No kidding. And I'm not kidding. So we've lubricated him up, and he's going to come back in about a week, and we're going to see if we can get his wheels off. So in case he has a flat tire, he can change it. That's the kind of stuff that's going on. And what I do is I put copper coat on the end of a Q-tip, and then I put the Q-tip with the copper coat. It's kind of a copper dust plus oil, and I put it on machine screws, in nuts, the stainless steel rivets that are in the back of the license plate holders. I spent 10 minutes yesterday doing that just to make sure I could get the license plate machine screws out next time. And so that's what we do. So, Rich, I just wanted to share that thought about how difficult it's becoming for people to maintain their own equipment for simple things because of the road salt, beet juice, and mist in the air that is rusting everything in sight. Your thoughts?
That term, forced obsolescence, and basically what it does to the little people, it lowers the... Let me just back up a minute. I know you'll agree with this, Vince, because how many times have you heard me say years ago that when you lower the bars of standards and expectations for getting a job and keeping a job based on what group you're in, this will metastasize like a cancer into victim group status, into feeling you deserve certain entitlements. And that's part of forced obsolescence. When you lower the bars of standards and products and services, especially, this gig economy that we're in, how about customer service? Do you remember years ago, folks, when we can call almost any company, big or small, and get terrific customer service, even almost build a relationship with the people? Today, it's almost impossible to even call them. And a lot of companies make you email them or text them, and they get back to you with a very vague response that's non-specific to your problem and does not fix the problem. Basically, it's plausible deniability for accountability. So this is why...
Hold that thought for 1 second. Hold that thought for 1 second. So I called last week. I called Felpro. Felpro manufactures some of the finest gaskets in the world. They're well known. Mechanics, that's the name mechanics look for. Another one is Victor, V-I-C-T-O-R, but F-E-L-P-R-O. So I was looking at some of the valve cover gaskets for a common application. And for the V6 engine, they are blue siliconized rubber. And I thought, these are the cat's meow. These are awesome. I really like these. And so we went to put them on a V8 engine, and the darn things are black rubber. I thought, these don't feel the same. I don't think they're as good. I don't think they are as pliable. I don't think they'll last as long. I don't think they contain as much silicone. So I called up Felpro, Felpro's technical support. And this isn't sales. This is their technical support line. And I get this guy. And I said, hi, my name is Vincent. I'm sorry I didn't get your name. And he gave me his first name. And I said, so I've got Felpro gaskets here. I've been using them for, 40, 50 years. And I noticed that for the V6 engine, this particular application, here's the part number, it's blue. It's siliconized rubber. It's awesome. And then for the V8, same engine, but the V8 version, same year, it's black. And it doesn't feel like the same kind of rubber. What's the difference? He said, well, it's the color. One's black, one's blue. Yeah, I know that. But what is the difference? One's black, one's blue. Okay. And I couldn't get any information out of this guy. And I got, just 1 or 2 word answers. So finally I said to him, so how long have you been doing this? And he told me he'd been a mechanic for 37 years, and he'd been on the phone for most of those years. And I said, well, thank you so much for your time. And I hung up, and I turned to our son, and I said, that's it for Felpro gaskets. That's it. This guy taught me I don't want to buy them anymore. That's how I'm reacting lately. One jerk at a company who doesn't represent the company kills that experience for me. One. They could be doing a great job, and then I get one jerk who is just not interested in helping, not interested in doing his or her job. And it ruins it for me, and I don't want to deal with him anymore. That's the way I've become lately. And it's weird. I didn't used to be like that. I don't shop at Sears anymore unless I absolutely positively have to. Because they don't know what they're doing. I don't want to go and have an experience with a salesperson who knows less than I do about what they're selling. They should know more than I do. They're wasting my time. I think it's going to give Joey a heart attack. Because Joe, everywhere he goes, he runs into this. And it's what you said. Rich Scheben, you've been saying this for years. And I hope our class understands. These are proof positive of what you've been saying. You lower the bars and standards and expectations, and this is what you get. You go to McDonald's, and I don't, but people do, and you look at the hamburgers, and those hamburger engineers at the grill will, if it has 3 pickles, they are able to put all 3 of them on top of each other so that only one bite gets pickles. Only one. And they do the same thing with onions.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort to do that. Everybody else would spread them around. Rich, if you had somebody come in, if you had a few people over for hamburgers or a cookout or that kind of thing, would you say, I'll tell you what, let me show you how I do it, or let me show you how I do the pickles? Because what you really want to do is you want to experience the 3X pickle bite, but only one. You want all 3 pickles in one bite. That way you can compare the bite with the pickles versus the rest of the hamburger, the other 90%, with no pickles. That's what's happening all over this country. And the expectations of the customers are being manipulated. You know, you buy a product at, let's say, for example, a Best Buy, and you buy this DVD player, and you talk to one of their engineers, you go, this is the one you want. This is this. The features of this, unbelievable. So you get it, you bring it home, a year and a half later, or 2 years later, it quits. And you bring it back, and you go, I'm really confused because, Bob over there said this was the best, and it didn't last 2 years. Oh, yeah, well, that's the way they are. They're all like that. As a matter of fact, you're lucky you got 2 years out of it. And so now the customers are expecting that electronics only last a couple years. They think that's normal. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, Vince, since you had the ability to dovetail a conversation from cars to pickles, I would like to take that opportunity and basically show you how, and we've talked about this a million times, but this is just another example, on how money's going into propaganda, lies, false flags, and hoaxes, and divide and conquer strategies for division. Here's an article right here. In fact, it's a video as well. Students say Obama immigration quote is racist when they think it's from Trump. Everything is done to manufacture perception, to trick you. So there was this student on campus, and he was talking about, he was interviewing other students because he looks young as well. And he would give a quote, and the response was, well, Trump is a racist, Trump is this, Trump is that. All the propaganda and misdirection given from college campus today because they don't want to teach the kids. They don't even want to teach them to debate. They want to teach them to scream and yell and do violence, and they're totally socially indoctrinated. And politically indoctrinated. So obviously the money for colleges has not been spent wisely. But people are waking up, but it's very obvious that the globalists / Democrats, they start with a conclusion, they build a narrative, Then they blackmail and bribe people to connect the dots through actors who are bought and paid for to manufacture certain perception. And in every context, nothing benefits the little people. So now I'm going to do another analogy or bridge that's totally different than what I just said here, since you did cars and pickles. I'm not going to forget the cars and pickle analogy, just so you know. And, I'll use an example like how they're demonetizing silver. Why is silver a 90-to-1 ratio to gold? It's because it's the poor man's gold. Because 80% of people live paycheck to paycheck. So we're in the so-called best and longest economic expansion, which is all a bunch of BS. What they're doing in every way, shape, and form is to make sure that we stay divided and we don't get prosperous, that we don't become self-sufficient, that we don't think of ourselves, that we can't control our own destiny, because that's how you manipulate the people. This has been done since and even before the Roman Empire. And people need to realize that almost everything is phony, is fake news. Everything is meant, even our own tax dollars, to keep us from our own prosperity and controlling our own destiny. They need to make sure that they foment hate, division, lower the bars of standards and expectations, make us break our will, make us become submissive. That's why all these words don't even the definitions are hijacked. Almost everything is a politically correct buzzword. Vince?
Yeah. Yeah, well, right back, right after these few short commercial announcements. And they're fewer. Well, they're not shorter, but they're fewer. Fewer commercials. And maybe we can get some more removed. We'll see. They're a little late to the game, but the mainstream media has figured out that U.S. mistrust is increasing. And what group is considered the least trusted? Well, that'd be the U.S. government. And according to the Pew Research Center, and this is on yahoo.com, they say they found that 69% of Americans say the federal government intentionally, let me say it a different word, intentionally withholds important information from the public. And they also say that 61% say the news media intentionally ignores important stories. Well, I think that would be at least the percentages of people who distrust what is being said in the media, and at least the percentage that distrusts the federal government and state government and local government, all government corporations. It seems that not only that, but these researchers for Pew, P-E-W, has found that 64% of U.S. adults believe trust in each other has declined. People don't trust each other as much as they used to. No question about that, in my mind and in my world. I'm finding pretty much everywhere I go, people misrepresent. There was a woman who was selling a car. And we bought the car. And it had a major failure that you couldn't tell if the car had been started within a couple hours prior. Major. And she and this is a middle-aged gal. Praise the Lord, she's probably a churchgoer and everything. She said the car was in good condition. It was not. It was not in good condition. Now, fortunately, we have the capability of fixing it, but that was concealed. I wanted to buy a freezer. I called this guy and I said, "Can I talk to you about it?" It was on Craigslist, and he said, "Yeah, he's had it for 3 years. And it really runs great." I said, "What brand is it?" He said, "Montgomery Ward's." I said, "Montgomery Ward's has been out of business for at least 20 years, maybe 30. He said, "Well, yeah, but, I've had it for 3 years." And He's misrepresenting the facts. What he was trying to say is it's by using words to misrepresent the facts, he's saying it's 3 years old. But that's not what the thing is at least 30 years old, at least. And they take pictures to carefully conceal what you would see as failures. There was a woman who was selling a truck. She worked for the government. She was at the highest level of a local government in a nothing town in Missouri, and she was selling a Dodge truck. And she said, mechanic says it needs ball joints. Well, my son and I drove 4 hours round trip. The car was rusted, completely rusted. You could see through the door, but the way she took the pictures, you couldn't see it. And because the color was dark, you couldn't see it. The gas tank was held up by a dog leash. Of course, that wasn't in the picture either. The front was pretty good. There was no rust on the front bumper because it's fiberglass. But the doors were completely rusted. So if you went from the edge of the front bumper all the way around the side of the vehicle, the back bumper, and all around the other side to the front bumper again, there was a continuous path of rust. The truck was shot. The rear bumper, metal bumper, completely rusted through. Didn't show in the pictures. This truck was just garbage. And she worked for the government, and she said her mechanic said it only needs ball joints. She absolutely positively lied, wasted our time and our money. I'm seeing more and more and more of this. All I'm doing is putting exclamation points on what this news article has been saying. But we've been saying this for years. There is a tremendous amount of mistrust, and it's well-deserved, because people lie, cheat, and steal. And they take their examples from the government. Rich, quick comment before we go into the next commercial break?
Well, since the music's been playing, I will comment after the break, Vince.
Okay, we'll be right back with Rich Scheben, offgridmontana.com. We're going down, class. Rich Scheben's with us. Offgridmontana.com. Robert in Kansas. Welcome. You're on with Rich Scheben.
Hey, Vincent, you know it's racist to spread your pickles around like that, right?
Well, somebody's got to do it. But seriously, have you ever had a fast food burger and see how sloppily they are put together?
I don't have as many anymore, Vincent. I try to stay away from that now. I'm going from distant memory. Yeah, well, I do. I have gotten, like you talk about traveling, right? And sometimes you got to eat some places. And so, yeah, you do eat, and you see the things you see and the people serving you food and everything you talk about, Vince. You're not wrong. Everything the way it's going. So I wanted to call. I had an economics question, so I wanted to call when Rich Scheben was on. So.
Yeah, go ahead,
okay.
Rob.
Well, yeah.
The $15 minimum wage was passed in the House, and I was wondering if Vincent also, of course, but what Rich thought about that, if he thought maybe the money velocity idea helping the bottom 93%, things like that, what he thought about the effects if that were to come to be.
Well, Rob, I'm looking at an article right now on Zero Hedge. It says, despite plunging rates, existing home sales slow for the 16th month. And it's saying it doesn't make economic sense. Well, it doesn't make economic sense because we have so much debt. You could look at it from a money velocity standpoint, but let's say you're making $14 an hour and your colleague at the same business is making $10 an hour. You're making $14 an hour because you have more seniority, you have a higher skill set, you have a tougher job. So let's say you're a $14 an hour job, you get a $1 pay raise, and your colleague, who has lower skill sets, lower proven results, all of a sudden one day gets $15 an hour. So you go to your boss and say, hey, now even though I got a $1 raise, my colleague here got a $5 raise, but yet he didn't produce more. He he didn't give more proven results, he didn't have higher qualifications, I still have a tougher job. See, it's going to be, it's going to open up a can of worms for the whole system. And if we don't reward merit based on things like hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications, and we don't reduce debt, that's why I keep saying, Robert, I think we had this conversation about a year or two ago. You were saying when I was talking about QE for the people and trying to benefit the little guy, the bottom 93%, by lowering the back end of the yield curve, the 10 to 30-year notes and bonds, so we can, all the people can get out of these high variable loans, including credit cards, because we've bailed out the banks so many times. We're creating money out of thin air, fractional reserve lending, stock buybacks. Everything is QE and welfare for the rich. So I say let's help the little people. And you're not helping them by because there's going to be there's going to be more people being laid off, and it's going to eventually, it's a long game benefit for the corporate oligarchies, our fascist system. And what it's going to do is going to make the little guy, the little company, not expand. In fact, they might decline in growth because they got to pay suboptimal workers more money, and it gives more control to the elite. And that's one of the reasons why, like Vince, when you were discussing that last subject before the break, basically you were, in a roundabout way, defining our new definition of fascism. It's where the corporate oligarchies, and that's why there's so much mistrust, are keep bailing out, whether it be verbally or money-wise or QE-wise or stock buyback-wise, it doesn't matter. Tax benefit-wise, we're giving all the benefits to the elite. So if people can understand that if we could all refinance, get out of variable loans, everything from credit cards, school loans, car loans, house loans, and refinance everything, if we got down to zero on the back end, Switzerland's the number one country to live in the world. It's been that way for a long time. Switzerland's the only country that has negative interest rates on 30-year mortgages. I know negative interest rates don't make sense. Nothing makes sense. We don't have supply and demand. We don't have free markets. It's all basically, it's fixed. It's rigged. It's rigged for the elite. So what we need to do is have laws of excess. We can't have all these rich people doing the stock buybacks in the QE, which is putting money into their pockets. We can't have, all this easy money, non-NGOs, the wealthy funding both sides of the war, the geoengineering, the steroids, antibiotics, and foods, GMOs, pesticides, fluoride, and chlorine, and 200 chemicals. Basically, everything that's being done is hurting the little people. And if the White House ever hears me, because I'm blue in the face talking about this, it's a great idea to give the little people some benefits. So we can't, if we don't refinance our debt, Rob, I don't care what the minimum wage is, it's going to make the big corporate oligarchies more successful, and it's going to increase delinquencies, defaults, and bankruptcies during the meantime, which the little people is going to have to pay for higher goods and services prices because of the cost shifting. That's my short answer.
Robert, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think Rich said something, a small business carve-out, where if you have small businesses under a certain, I don't want to define that now, but whatever that would be normally defined as, I think, number of employees, things like that, would be something to consider. And then Rich talked about upward pressure on wages. Certainly, I thought about that, you could cause that to occur. But if you look at the trend in wages over the past decades, I don't know that would be a bad thing. And then as far as negative interest rates, I studied in business school. I studied a lot of finance, and I don't know what a negative interest rate is either. At the same time, I guess if you wanted to push debt out on margin in some way, you could get debt out the door. But I don't know how it works in a traditional interest debt system where you have a negative rate. Certainly on things like housing and things like that, not apply you might give negative rates to, institutional level governments, things like that. But I don't know as far as negative interest rates. If you're given negative interest rate loans, Rich, I wanted to apply and to see if I qualify. And if I do, that would be great, for sure. But I don't know what that is either. But yeah, as far as the $15 minimum wage, I don't know what it's going to do ultimately. They're going to phase it in. I hope it helps a lot of people. Of course, there's innovation to think about, but I think the corporations are innovating anyway. So I don't know. I just hope it helps people. That's all I can say. I hope it helps the economy. People can go out to eat, do whatever, and things get better that way. So.
Robert,
well, unfortunately, wages are not keeping up with debt increases. And I'm not a proponent of negative interest rates so that just flat out without giving an explanation. But the reason why I say it is because it looks like the whole world is heading that direction. Now, if interest rates have to go down because, and I've talked about that even today, everything collapses. And I've given specific examples. I've talked hours about this. But if we have our interest rates go down, why not do something different? Instead of feathering the nest of the wealthy who are making all the laws and bail out more banks and more insurance companies and more auto manufacturers and everybody else around the world, including other banks, why not, if we go to negative interest on the long end of the yield, okay? And we got to have means testing. Negative interest rates is basically a fee, okay? It's a penalty. But if you have under $1 million net worth or whatever number they pick, you shouldn't have to pay that fee. I'm talking about for the little people, if we go negative, especially on the long end, it's an incentive, a light at the end of the tunnel program. So let's say you have a house loan and you're having a hard time paying the interest, never mind the principal. Well, at the end of that fiscal year of payment or calendar year, depending on how they do it, you get, let's say we have 3%. Let's say we all refinance to the 30-year. I know most houses, home loans are closer to the 10-year bond. But let's say we all refinance at the 30-year. Let's just say, and let's say it's a minus 3%. Average Tom, Dick, and Harry, Joe Smith, gets 3% back at the end of that fiscal year for paying their loan. We have bailed out so many of the banks and the big corporations, and I've talked about zombie companies in huge detail with specificity. Everything that's been done has been done to benefit the already rich, the already super wealthy. Why don't we benefit and bail out the little people? I don't care if you call it QE, but if interest rates are heading down, why not use that as an example instead of funding both sides of wars and funding NGOs and funding all the too big to fails and too big to jails? Why don't we fund the little people? It's not a class envy thing because it's corruption and manipulation that's saving the super wealthy. QE alone was made for liquidity, giving liquidity to banks and Wall Street. Okay, so the bailouts, the too big to fails, the too big to jails, they have no accountability for anything. Let's help our economy by reducing debt. Debt, corporate debt, household debt. We have $14 trillion in household debt in this country. Corporate debt is, like I mentioned earlier, twice the amount that took down the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis that took down the economy in 2008. We have more than twice the corporate leverage. So if we could have, and when I say go to zero or negative, if we're heading that way, we might as well use it to take advantage of, for the little people. You don't use that to take out more debt. You got to pay off your existing debt. There's got to be conditions. I have a 10-step process to really help the economy, but you can't expect improved economic situations with our demographic situation, the corrupt monetary policies from the central bank, group identity politics, and Keynesian economics. And Vince, you could vouch for that. I've talked about all four of those reasons till I'm blue in the face for hours over the radio. The whole system is so corrupt and so manipulated, we're not helping the little people. The powers that be, Rob, are so addicted. This is an addiction. Power, money, and control is an addiction. And they have to keep the little people in debt. Well, why not turn this around and give for all the quantitative easing or QE or Operation Twist, I don't care what name you call it. We've bailed out the wealthiest people in the world and foreign countries and foreign banks. Why not help our people with a different idea?
Robert, would you like to hold through the break?
Sure thing, Vince.
Okay. And so Rich Sheben's with us, offgridmontana.com. Robert's in Kansas. I'm in Missouri, and we'll be right back. I've got a couple comments, and Rich Sheben's with us. Robert in Kansas is with us. I'm Vin Finelli. And I've got a couple comments on what he said, and I see some holes in it. And here's where they are. They're not financial holes. These are value holes. So 26 years ago, I offered in Virginia to teach young students in high school computer technology. I volunteered to teach them. And the superintendent said, well, it seems like a good idea, but instead of doing it at the high school, how about we'll see if it works. So why don't you train them at your place? I said, okay. So I volunteered to train students after school. They'd have to show up at my farm, and I would teach them computer technology 3 hours after school every other day. And I invited the parents to come, and I actually required the parents to come, and we had a lot of people show up, probably close to 100 people, with parents and students. And I explained how I would be training them and computer technology, and there'd be a lot of learning, and it was a voluntary basis from them and me. There was no charge from me to teach them. And I asked if there were any questions, and one parent said, yeah, I know what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get free labor from my daughter. And I said, I don't think so. I said, as a matter of fact, there's a government of a very large city that pays $100 an hour. This is 26 years ago for my attention so that I will design their citywide computer network and system. They pay $100 an hour for my time. And I'm not charging your daughter anything. And your daughter doesn't know anything about computers in the first place. So I said, your premise is wrong. Now, let's just move fast forward, maybe a couple decades, and to Missouri. So, well, let me just take a step back. When I was in high school, after school, I had a job making sub sandwiches at an independent sub sandwich joint. I made $1.65 an hour. And then I went to an auto parts store in the next town, and they paid me $1.85 as an auto parts counter person, selling auto parts, helping customers with getting the right auto parts. I wanted to excel at those jobs. I wanted to make the best sub sandwiches. I wanted to provide the customers with the best auto parts customer service to help them get the right part for their need without overspending or getting the wrong part. Well, my son and I were at O'Reilly's, which is a chain auto parts store chain in Missouri, and it's kind of a regional outfit. And they pay their guys between $10 and $15 an hour. And there were a couple guys lollygagging behind the counter when my son and I walked in. There weren't very many customers, and the young people were lollygagging behind the counter. And I said to the guy, so I used to do what you're doing, and I opened every box in between customers so I'd know what the inventory was and what we were selling. Have you guys done that? And one guy said to me, they don't pay me enough to do that. So that shows that even with a higher wage, $10 or $15 an hour, young people and employees today don't feel they're being paid enough to do a good job. Employers can't find qualified employees. They can't. The young people walk off the job after 15, 20 minutes, an hour, or a day. They don't like it. It doesn't fit in with their lifestyle. So they quit. So paying them, Robert, $15 an hour is crazy because, first of all, they don't know enough to earn $15 an hour, in my opinion. I wouldn't hire a single one of them to do anything, including load bales of hay on a trailer. I wouldn't do it because they don't know what they're doing and they'll wreck the equipment. So just raising the minimum wage is crazy, in my opinion. I think the market should drive a free and open market. A legitimate market should drive wages. Financiers in Wall Street and bankers should no way get the compensation that they're getting. The CEO of Laclede Electric, whatever he's making, maybe 150, 200 grand a year, should no way make that much money. The attorney at $250 an hour who pads the bills, in my opinion, should not be making that much money, $225, $250 an hour. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, small business mom and pops are working on such thin margin right now. Right now, Robert, we have Buffett, Bezos, and Gates. They own 50% of our country's net worth, and the inequality just keeps growing and growing and growing. And when you reward people based on what group you're in and not hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications, the distortions get worse. And one of the ideas in my plan is to, let's say the average, I'm shooting from the hip here, let's say the average household debt is $50,000. Let's do QE for the people. Let's give each household $50,000. If you're in debt, you have to be forced through vouchers to pay down your debt so it doesn't increase inflation. If you are at a debt and you're a saver, well, let's have a light at the end of the tunnel program. Call it that. If you're a saver, you did the right thing. You paid your bills. You paid off your school loan, your car loan, your mortgage, etc., your credit card loan. Well, guess what? You have that $50,000 to actually put into the economy. You have to spend it in, say, 1 or 2 years or whatever. And that could be done through a voucher system at some state, it's on some level. So if we did that, not only could we help the little people, reward the savers, the people who did the right thing, but give QE to the people. And I'm not saying negative interest rates is the answer. I'm just saying it looks like interest rates are going down all around the world, especially in a fiat currency where there's so little consumer confidence in this printing of money. And if they keep printing more and more money with the Fed or other central banks, because they're all in cahoots right now, there's going to be more and more or less consumer confidence.
Rich, hold that thought. We're out of time. We're out of time. Robert in Kansas next week, please join us.